Welcome to the California Nevada Chat this Friday, June 26th. My name is Nikki Gatch, and I am the Executive Director and CEO of the Southern California PGA. On behalf of our president, Dr. Allison Kurt, as well as our colleagues from the Northern California section, President Nick Bailey and Executive Director Caitlin Doyle, welcome. We're so glad that you've joined us. We hope that you've had a great week. We're definitely in full swing of summer. Just completed the Women's US Open here at Riviera, which was great. The US Open last week at Shinnecock, and we've got the KPMG Women's PGA Championship happening now, trying to keep track of how our Southern California member Natalie Vivaldi is doing. She's one of the 8 PGA members that's competing on the Corbridge team. So best of luck to her today as she finishes up her round. Once again, we've got a couple of great guests lined up for you today. In addition to our legislative update from Craig Kessler, Executive Director of the California Alliance for Golf, we're joined today by a PGA professional and co-founder of Golf Live, Alan Belden, and one of his coach ambassadors, Rick Sessinghouse. I'll introduce Alan and Rick and let them take it away. Alan is joining us. He's just outside of Boston, so he's on East Coast time. Alan's a PGA professional with over 30 years experience in the golf industry. He's the co-founder and chief coach officer at Golf Live Corporation, a technology company that builds software solutions for golf professionals and enterprise solutions for some of the world's largest golf businesses and academies. A respected leader in the game, Alan served as a president of the New England PGA in 2019 to 21, was named New England PGA Golf Professional of the Year in 2015, and received the 2024 New England PGA Bill Strasbaugh Award. Joining Alan today is Southern California PGA member Rick Sessinghouse. Dr. Rick Sessinghouse is one of golf's most respected coaches and the world's leading golf-specific sports psychologist. He has been Colin Morikawa's coach since Colin was 8 years old, guiding him to multiple major championships as both his swing and mental coach. With a PhD in sports psychology, Rick blends technical mastery with mental performance training in a way few coaches can match. Rick is also a member of the California Teaching Hall of Fame and is just a great supporter of everything that we do here at the section. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning, and I will let you take it away.
Thank
Thank you.
you for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. Appreciate it very much. I'll just do a quick overview of what we're going to cover today. I appreciate everybody jumping on. We just have one slide here to just kind of give you an idea of what the topics at hand will be. And then we're going to take this slide down. The last thing I'm going to do is do a slide presentation and put everybody to sleep. I want this to be interactive and have everybody have an opportunity to type in their questions. We want this to be a two-way street. Rick and I are just going to try to provide some insight as to what the trends are in coaching and where the business of coaching is heading. And some of those relevant topics are obviously AI. It's a question that I get every time I do a webinar, go to a summit or a seminar. And then obviously some of the things that I hear from coaches every day is how do I get out of the time trap of trading time for money on the lesson tee, how to properly implement technology and scaling your business, as well as the social media trends and specialization, which is something that Rick is going to lean into and how that can help you with your business. And I think ultimately the overview of this is, really treating your coaching as a business first, and having a plan and a strategy is how you're going to scale and drive the most amount of revenue without adding a ton of hours to your daily schedule. So with that, I will turn it back over to Rick and let him have at it first.
Sure. So, Alan, I think the key thing that we want the participants to understand is that it used to be when I started coaching over now it's 32 years ago. I thought the only way to be successful in the coaching business was to be as good a coach as possible, right? And learn how to communicate better, get different certifications and such. I want to emphasize that's still important, everybody. However, what I think has changed is we need to learn new skills as a business owner. We need to develop as a business person as much as we need to develop our skills as a coach. It's more and more competitive out there. 30 years ago, I didn't have, there wasn't YouTube and Instagram and AI, and you were at a golf course and you built relationships, and those relationships help sustain your business. Things have changed. And unfortunately, Alan, I don't know about you, but I've been around some really, really good coaches. I mean, they got the job done, they helped, but unfortunately, the trends kind of got past them and they couldn't develop a business model that could sustain them. And then they're no longer in the golf business. And so I think we're looking at developing skills as a coach, but I think what has to happen is developing skills as a business owner. And you may still work for a club, but I think you need to view yourself as somebody who owns their own business and be an entrepreneur for there to be long-term success. And some of the things that we have on this slide are some of the challenges, some of the trends, and some of the what actually can be beneficial to help your business as we grow.
Yeah, 100%, Rick. So I think, to your point, one of the things that I would start with is like, I talking to coaches every day. What can coaches do to invest in themselves, right? And making time to make sure that they're doing things to expand their reach. I'm just gonna start with AI because it is if it's not the first question, it's the second question that I get usually. And it's always like, well, is AI going to replace coaching? And the answer is emphatically no. It has nothing. AI it will. My response is AI is going to speed up how things are done and how information is delivered. And it will make us more efficient, and it will certainly do some of the tasks that we normally do manually throughout the day. But it is not going to replace coaching and replace the human element. So anybody who is not using AI, you're going to get run over, for lack of a better term. So get comfortable with it and learn how to use it and how to leverage it in your daily tasks. I can see a time not too far in the distant future where any lesson requests that come in, I'll use this just as a basic example. Lesson request comes in either via email or text. AI is going to put that on your calendar for you, right? Like that's starting to happen now already. So those are some of the things, but that and the ability to deliver the right piece of instruction or coaching at the right time, to me, requires deductive reasoning, and that requires the human element.
Yeah. And I think there's two, when I think of AI in our business, I do think there's two completely different pathways. I think there's the one where we're seeing software companies that are coming up with AI algorithms, and you can do it on your phone. And there's a lot of like I have a couple simulators at my indoor facility that you could build in AI to look at somebody's golf swing, do an algorithm, see what the cause and effects are and such. That's one form of AI, which I'll talk about in a moment. The other one, I think, which you're hinting on too, is using AI as an administrative tool, which can, I mean, I'm telling you, really, really helpful. Is To give you an example, 80% of my business now is mental game coaching, 20% is still swing based. And with the mental game, I could do a Zoom session. I could even do it in person, but a Zoom session, have it completely transcribed, have that become my summary notes, create worksheets off of that are personal for that person, and I just press send. And that now takes me 3 minutes to what used to take me, let's say 15 to 20 minutes of typing things out after I've written things down. So we can leverage AI to actually not only shrink the time it takes to keep the relationship going and giving the feedback you need, but actually it improves it. I'm not missing anything now because it's doing all the work for me. And I think along with the administrative stuff, and again, what I love about Golf Live is when we start talking about scheduling and feedback and having everything in one space for our students so it's easy to access, and I'm not doing this email and drag and dropping videos here and stuff like that. Yes, there is a learning curve at first, and I know we have that pushback on change, but it will make things much easier down the road. So Admin AI, utilizing AI tools, I think is crucial for that. The other part, though, which I think is getting in people's heads, like, oh my gosh, AI is going to take over literally my coaching, and I would say it's not. I think it's going to be a tool. I remember way back now when I was giving lessons and somebody came in, are you worried about YouTube? Because now all these pros are putting tips on there on YouTube and people can just look them up. And then I go, no, actually, more of that is actually better for me. There's more confusion, right? So, like, Alan, how is this 18 handicap who downloads an AI tool and they take a lesson from AI? I think they're going to be more confused, personally. And we don't know if the AI tool is creating the correct algorithm, but more importantly, coaching is about relationship building, communication, diagnostics. Is that through all the years that we've been coaching, we can ask better questions than even AI can, and we can know those. So I do use AI to a point. In fact, in our app, we do have an AI coach, Rick, that does mental game to help people, but that's not replacing me. That's an add-on value for my customer.
Correct. It's supplemental to
Correct.
what you are doing. And I think, you know, one of the things that I will lean into what you just said there, we are in the relationship business, right? And I mean, like we're in the people business, and when you're helping somebody to play better golf, that personal relationship cannot be replaced by a chatbot. It just can't. And that's where I think, you know, one of the things that that I lean into. I mean, I use every aspect under the sun to teach. I still do actively coach. I was actually teaching this morning. You know, and so video software analysis is important. Pre-recorded video exchange is important. The ability for the student to chat and ask you questions is important. But at the end of the day, the whether it's a live virtual or an in-person session, the ability to communicate, the ability to detect and elicit emotion, right? Those are things that are important to how people feed off of that energy. And as a point of like, I got a text from, it was the second lesson I gave this morning. And my student actually said to me, he goes, I loved your energy this morning, right? Had nothing to do with what we worked on, right? He was sculling chips over the back of the green after getting home in two on par fives. And like, so that was the complaint that he came with me this morning. But he made no mention of what we worked on the technical side of things. It was just like, he goes, I loved your energy this morning. I don't know, maybe I had a extra espresso before I went out the door or whatever. My point is that that is something that you cannot put into AI. Chat is not going to replace that. It will make us more efficient. But you know, and I actually tested one of the AI apps and put the same pre-recorded swing in three different times and got three different responses. So,
Exactly.
you know, which is, in my opinion, exactly what YouTube does, because three different people can can perceive the information that they're seeing in the video three different ways. And that's where, you know, effective coaching and those with a good eye and a good feel
Hmm.
for what is actually going on. It's I'm not worried about it. For those coaches who are not using AI in any form or fashion to help them expedite how things are being done throughout the day, I would be worried about those individuals, but I'm not worried about AI replacing coaches.
Yeah, and I think also it's the demographic who you're working with. If you're working with a demographic that's maybe the age of, 50 to 70 and maybe they're the country club golfer and stuff, will they want any AI stuff and all that? Probably not. But the younger generation they've grown up on it and they expect it. They do expect it now. Oh, why aren't
Yep.
you using this tool? And I was told this. And so we have to be proficient if that's the demographic we're going to go with. And obviously, the younger they are, the more that they're likely to understand the AI sometimes better than I would. And I have
Yeah.
to educate myself on that. So I think looking at the demographic you're working with may also, and I hate to say this, force you to utilize these tools, or people are going to look at other coaches that are using that. And sometimes a student doesn't know what's best for them. I understand. Okay. But we have to be a proficient enough to know what the trends are in coaching and what these other coaches are providing and seeing how that can match up with the skills that we have.
It's no different than a launch monitor. I mean, if you gave somebody, you know, a TrackMan or a quad and sent them to the range by themselves and had them try to decipher the numbers and the information that was being given back to them, like what good would that really do if they didn't know how
Right.
to fix it, right? Like it's like, what does the face being 4 degrees close to the path really mean? And how do I
Right.
solve for that? Right. Like it's so like it, I don't, it's no different than that. And again, launch monitors, when I first started doing this and you started doing this, we relied on ball flight. We looked at where the ball went, and that was what told us what was going on. Now, it wasn't always accurate. The launch monitor actually confirms what's going on and can sometimes see things that we can't. But it is not going to replace what the coaches did. It just made it a little bit more efficient, and we were able to provide information. And to your point, those coaches that are coaching with those technological tools, whether it's force plates or launch monitors or video software analysis, the perceived value that they're
Correct.
providing the players is higher than those that are not.
Yeah. And
So,
I think that's the key thing is perceived value. Now, I'm not going to go off on my next little opinion here, but I think the younger coaches that are coming out are relying too much on technology to do the coaching, and they haven't done enough repetitions without the technology to understand how to diagnose with their own eye, how to communicate. I mean, on the PGA Tour, you're not going to see any force plates out there. Well, they're warming up. Of course, you're going to see some radar systems and stuff like that. And yes, you're going to see some stuff on a screen, but they're there to perform that week, and there's not going to be a ton of technology out there. Okay, but you as a coach, if you want to be able to make sure your eyes can still see things, right? Some
mhm.
coaches, we get lazy when we rely just on technology and we can't even pick up a swing in full speed anymore, which is an issue. So there's kind of a blinding because we use technology way too much on numbers instead of communicating and understanding and questioning and having that relationship also.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to look at the individual and look at what they're doing, right? And it just an analogy, like it's so I'm just going to throw 30 seconds of this, but this is exactly the point. When my doctor retired, right, after 30 years, I was turned over to a PA in his office, and I left the practice because when I went there, all she did was look down at her computer and type in information that I was relaying back to her. Never once looked up and looked at me, right? So it's like just because you're putting the
Right.
information in the right boxes doesn't mean that you're actually and so and I and it was I'm in an age where a lot of my doctors are retiring, unfortunately, so I got to go find new ones. But that's just an example of, I think, one of the things that, that to your point, relying on the tech too much. So,
Mhm.
um,
Definitely.
well, we could talk about AI forever, but let's move on to the time trap, right? And the exchanging of time for money on the tee, which is another thing that I hear on a daily basis from coaches. And how do I get out of that? And I know you have a couple of ideas around that. So I'll let you kick it off, and then I'll piggyback on what you said.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think I would call myself a traditional coach for about 20 years, is that I was at the end of a driving range. I was fortunate that I had access to a golf course, so I did do some playing lessons, everybody, but I was at the end of that driving range, had my own stall, and just, did 40 to 50 hours worth of one-on-one coaching. Okay. I loved it. And yet there was always that ceiling, right? It was like, wow, how can I make more money? Or wow, I'm getting burned out at 50 hours a week or something like that. I'm there 5.5 days a week. I was fortunate the facility I was at allowed me to kind of be my own boss. I was an independent contractor, but we want to have a career and we want to grow that. So I look at it in two different ways. I look at it, what can you do actually at a golf course to start to leverage that? And I've learned a lot from Will Robbins, who I know is fantastic at being able to do some group type formats. And I think that's very important. Again, it depends on your demographic. I work with a lot of competitive junior golfers, and sometimes it's best to do now either some mini clinics. So I might bring in 5, 6 juniors at a time, and we're talking about mental game stuff, or taking them on the golf course and being able to have a threesome that you're going out there with, and you're doing a playing lesson for 2 hours and you're leveraging the time now with that. So I think at a facility, we can certainly look at group and clinics as leveraging price per hour. Okay.
Yep.
Now, I think what people are really looking for now, because of technology, is how do I leverage outside of those normal hours? So maybe I don't have to have as many hours on site. Okay. And that's what something that intrigued me years ago. And I've said this a few times is, um, I failed a couple times doing this before, everybody. So just I'm letting you know. But the technology's gotten so much better to be able to scale and put your stuff out there that something like a Golf Live wasn't around 15 years ago when I first started tried to scale. Okay. Here is again, we see membership sites, we see, different types of forums that people could join, but people can have remote coaching with you. I do a lot of my coaching from an office space with Zoom, and I can do that at different hours of the day and different times. So I have flexibility in my schedule. But I think it's looking at, do you have something you want to send out to the world with golf that is unique and that you can be branded and that you could now have memberships or you could have online coaching? That does take some time. It does, Alan, as you know that. Yet
Yeah.
what's the upshoot past that is now I have flexibility in my schedule. I can don't always have to be on site. The weather, I'm in SoCal, so pretty much we got good weather all the time, but I remember back in the El Nino years where I got hammered one February. I only had one day of coaching. And so I was looking at other ways to, again, leverage my expertise. And so we now have technology to be able to do that. But then even on site, how can you leverage clinics, group settings? Playing lessons, I think, is a huge one, by the way, but it's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, I'll start where you just finished in the playing lessons because I think the thing that I would say, in my experience, and I think you'll agree with this, is that what the players will do on the golf course does not very often reflect what's going on the driving range when they're in front of you. Hence the old comment of like, I can't take it from the range to the golf course, because they don't do the same things. The decision making is poor. There's a lot of things that go into that. And when you can go out and spend time with them and make them aware, because I think the first the first step to any change is making them aware. Like they have no idea that their aim is off, or how they could have approached a shot differently and played it differently and taken, used a different wedge around. There's just so many different variations of things that you can find in the middle of a playing lesson that just not going to happen on the range, right? So there's a time and a place for both. But to your point, you go and spend, even if it's just for 4 or 5 holes, if you only get an hour. I mean, I've done a lot of that where it's like, you might spend an hour on the range tee, and then it's like if they've got time and they've booked you, you just go do 4 holes, right? 5 holes, because and then take to the golf course what you just worked on. You'll both learn a lot about what they're doing, right? And so that's definitely one of the things that I think is important. The group setting too, I think it's, and I understand that it's not everybody has the ability to do that, but obviously leveraging the multiple, right? It's $200 or $300 for an hour lesson. If you're charging $50 per person for a clinic and you get 10 people to come, well, you just increase that. And I think that the other thing that and I'll segue right into this is, how can you specialize in something, right? So, I years ago, Todd Soanes is somebody who I've worked with and mentored under, right? He was the short game guy, right? He was known for his putting, and we did some short game schools together, and I learned how to do putter fittings and short game schools from Todd. And I leveraged that. And in my area, in this neck of the woods in Massachusetts, I became known as the short game guy. And so that was a specialization that I had, where short game schools would fill up, did a ton of putter fittings and things of that nature. And so I know that's one of your things that you want to lean into, is that having a niche that separates you from the rest of the pack is
Mhm.
how you will generate more revenue. And I think one of the things I want to say before I know you get into the specialization aspect of it, generating more revenue doesn't mean just adding more hours, right? I
Correct.
think one of the things that if you provide a better experience, a better value, right, through the use of specialization and technology, you can raise your rates. If your book is full and you got a 2 or 3 week wait to get in to see you, then you can go up, right? It's not just about oh, I need to add another 10 hours to my schedule. It's like, if you're only charging $100 an hour, $150 an hour, how do we get to 150 or 200? And I'll just throw in a really quick example. The coach that I worked with, he has his own brick and mortar facility, 6 TrackMan bays, beautiful facility, charging $85 an hour. Now, he is in a rural area of New Hampshire, so it's not this is not downtown Manhattan, so in the city, but using a phone to just record video with no analyzation and no follow-up. So quickly took him out of that, put him into software, our software, where now he can share and engage with the students on a regular basis. And in 6 months, his book's gotten full. He's up to $125 an hour already. So like it's just like that's just a small example of like the things that you have to do to provide value, to give people a better experience, and you can charge more. And so you don't have to work more hours. You just got to figure out how you can create value to raise your rate.
Hmm. Yeah, the specialization one I think is crucial for all coaches, but the younger coaches that are coming into the PGA and they want to be coaches for their career is please have that great foundation of a swing coach and a short game coach and playing lessons and understand that. I think we have so much specialization. Some of it is because of technology, whether it's force place technology, whether it's 3D biomechanics, whether it's mental game, club fitting, your short game. Really, it's like, I can go to my general practitioner for a doctor, but if I need brain surgery, I better go to a brain surgeon. Okay. I'm not going to the general guy anymore. So that specialization will get paid more. What I advise for coaches is to find what they're passionate about, not necessarily what you think a trend is. Like, I know a lot of people are doing speed training stuff. Fantastic. I have no interest in that at all, even if it might be something that's viable for more. But mental game performance, emotions, all that kind of stuff, I'm all in. You're going to tend to learn it faster. You're going to be passionate about it. And then you can kind of put your shingle out there saying, I'm an expert at this in a specialization. I would say there's those type of things, like I'm specializing in mental game or speed training or short game. But I also would say within that would be demographics. So I am very clear that I work with competitive junior golfers who have aspirations to play college and beyond.
Yep.
That is what I've put myself into. And now I use the stories of the players that I've worked with that have gone to the higher and higher levels as the evidence that I am one of the best at that. I'm certainly using mental game stuff for it. So I think there's two ways in specialization is yes, there could be the add-on of, oh, I do force plates or something like fantastic. But I think also if you're within a certain niche of a demographic, it helps your marketing also because you're very clear of who you're going to. I think
Yep.
some uh, pros get a little bit concerned with, well, gosh, if I just market to that, I don't think there's enough people. I go, well, but you can charge more to those people than just saying, yes, I'm somebody who fixes slices for 18 handicaps. Well,
Yeah.
that's a big demographic. It is.
Right.
But what I've noticed with that demographic is they take one lesson and that's about it. Oh, you fixed my slice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to develop players. I want to have a relationship with players. That to me is also about building a long-term business.
Yeah. And I think that goes hand in hand with the coaching environment, right? It's not, there's a difference between taking the lesson and actually going to a coach to work into it. It's a relationship, right? And it's one of the things that anybody that I work with that's a new client that comes to me, I do an onboarding call where I make it very clear, like, this is what you can expect from me. This is what you will get from me. And this is what I expect from you. And the individual that calls 3 days before the club championship begins and would like to take a lesson to get tuned up, I'm not interested in working with you because A, I can't really do much between now and then, and it's going to only make things worse instead of better.
Yeah.
And the understanding that it does take time, several months or a year or several years, right? And I've been doing this long enough now where I had a gentleman this morning, my first lesson this morning, I've worked with him for over 25 years. And he's still getting better, loves it. It's all about enjoying the journey, right? Of getting better, right? And so,
Yeah.
but yeah, to your point, um, it's much easier to lean into a marketing message if the message is very concise and clear. It's true of any business, right? And
Mhm,
so you're
mhm.
creating value. I mean, I was thinking about this morning. I was thinking like the difference between a Rolex and a Timex. They both tell time, but one can be 5 to 50,000, the other one's $50, right?
Right.
You and I are probably old enough to remember the commercial where it's like, time the guy had the Timex at the bottom of, I think it was an outboard motor. He drove it on the boat. It takes a
Right.
lick and keeps on ticking, right? But they both tell time, but why is one a few $1,000s and the other one's, less than $100? Well, it's
Yeah.
perceived value, and what are you getting for that, right? And to your point, you can lean into that marketing message. And once you have a few success stories, it's no different whether it's on the, getting that high school player to a D1 and you have those testimonials. In my case, when I was working, doing a lot of short game schools, people's handicaps drop like a rock. Like that's the thing that people lowering scores is the number one component to making sure that you are successful. And and in my opinion, it's like, chipping and pitching and putting makes up two-thirds of most players' scores that are in that mid-handicap range. And those people, when they start dropping like that, what's the first thing they do? They go and tell their friends. Or they're playing in the foursome that they play with on every Friday morning. And this one guy's been getting beat for the last 10 years. And all of a sudden he's taking his buddy's money and they want to know what he's been doing, right? So that's, it's very, very, to your point, much easier to market yourself if you have something specific that you can lean into. So
Yeah. And I want to go back real quick about like when we talk about, leveraging time and stuff like that is I've changed this to instead of necessarily somebody saying, "Hey, what's a 1 hour session with me?" I go, I really don't do one-offs, but I give them whatever the price is for that. And I said, tell me what your goals are, and let's create a plan and create a program, right? Now, the program, like with the junior golfers, college golfers I work with, does include access to me through text, through Golf Live, through different things. So now they feel like I'm at their disposal, which is great. Now they're paying for it, everybody. I'm not saying this is free, but it's part of a program is you get access to me. Yes, we have our normal sessions. If you have a question after your practice round, please reach out. And that perceived value has gone up because now they're bought into a program. So it's not, and I do invoice them for all this time. I think that's important too, the relationship building. And I've learned this through some other coaches where they're saying, okay, if your goal is to become a single digit and you're a 12 handicap, we've got 3 shots to get. Let's work on it. This is what we're going to do. And they're going to listen to you if you have the plan for them, and they're going to pay for it. And because that's their motivation. That's what I would also encourage coaches is you are the doctor in this place. You are the one who's going to diagnose and give them a plan, and they just want to be told what to do. And if you create a plan, that program, you can make more money off that than hoping they book another session next week or going from there.
Yeah. And I've moved my business from the one-offs to monthly subscriptions. Now, I'm not saying that I don't still get people that pay me hourly,
Sure.
but a large percentage of my business is now monthly, right? So it's a coaching relationship. They're paying for a certain amount of time that they have access to me, but the perceived value that they can send me a pre-recorded video or they can send me a chat message whenever they want, in addition to the time that they're either with me in person or in a live virtual call or analyzing video. That's to your point. It's like they have access to somebody, and I don't need to work with 50 people at once in order to make my nut when you're collecting monthly revenue. And that's
Correct.
the point, right? So, the bottom line is those people that are willing to make that commitment almost always get better because they are committed to practicing.
Correct.
And if they get better, they go and tell their friends, and that is the best form of marketing, right? So
100%.
and it's one of the things I think, there is no excuse anymore to have people come and take a lesson, go away, and not get any feedback for 2 or 3 weeks or a month. Like there's no reason to do that. We have the ability, obviously, in our technology, and there's other platforms that you can do it on. But the thing that I love about what we do and how I use it is that I can connect with a student regardless of where they are, right? And regardless of the weather, right? I just as a point of reference, like I worked in my studio this morning with in-person clients. I gave a virtual lesson to a gentleman that is on the West Coast in your neck of the woods
Yeah.
last night that I've been working with, for a month in a virtual setting. And most of my students are hybrid, right? Being in Boston, a lot of my clients go to Florida during the winter, but I'm still able to stay engaged with them through the different things that we can do on the platform. So, and I tell this point blank, it's like I'm not if just you have to, whether you're using our platform or not, you've got to be using something to engage with the students, right? The thing that we do is we make it a little easier to organize and put it all in one place. There's one question here which actually I missed, Rick, and I'm going to answer this real quick, and it says, is there a particular AI platform that integrates more effectively with the business each of you do and or use the most? So I will tell you the one I use the most is Claude. And I started
Oh, yeah.
a couple of years ago, like everybody else, I started in Chat GPT, which is okay, in my opinion. Then I started using Gemini because it does sync with Google Workspace, which is what the world that I live in. And I think Gemini is good for documents and things of that nature. But from a business perspective, to be able to actually do decks and slides and financials, and to be able to integrate with CRM tools and QuickBooks and things of that nature, Claude's a beast. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I've gone down a similar road as I still use chat a little bit just to kind of do some research and stuff. But my company, we are going with Claude, and we also use a note taker called Motion that in all of our meetings that's always taking the notes. It goes into Claude, and then we can develop whether it's developing a new product or just keeping our notes in an area. But we're using Claude a lot more now.
Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about social media. I know that you have you've done a lot of work. You and I were talking, and I think awareness and brand awareness, right? Social media is one component. There's a lot of ways of doing it. But I'll kick off by saying this. We have a lot of coaches on our platform who are very successful in the social media space. And the one thing that I will share with everybody that's listening is that if that is something that you desire to do, there is a commitment on your part. Um, Anybody who tells you that you can, pay a few $1,000, have some content created, post it for a few weeks, and think that that's going to take you to the moon, it doesn't work that way. This is a slow play over a period of time where you start to train the algorithms and you start to lean into certain things. And the one thing I learned, and I learned this from somebody that went from 0 to 140,000 followers in 2.5 years, there's no bad content. Because he said to me, he shared with me, he said, he goes, I spent hours upon hours editing a certain piece of content and really worked hard on it and thought it was going to be great, and it did okay. He goes, and then I would just shoot an organic piece of content of me like playing, 4 holes of golf and
Yeah.
just cut a couple pieces and put it. And he goes, and that one went viral for whatever reason. So I think the message is you have to post on a consistent cadence and you have to do it over a certain period of time. And I think one of the things that, that I hear from coaches like, well, I don't have time to do that. What I will say is that if you're coaching and you're using video and you're using a video solution, you are creating content. So you're already
Exactly.
doing it. You just have to take the time and leverage 1 or 2 hours a week to dedicate yourself to actually managing that content, or find somebody that will help you do it. We do that. But the fact of the matter is that it's not a slow play, and I mean, it's not a quick get rich quick deal. You've got to put the time and the energy in, and it will take 3 to 6 months is the absolute minimum of posting on a consistent basis. And that's being transparent and telling everybody the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I pushed against social media for a while. And then I'm fortunate that with my company, we do have a administrator who does take care of a lot of it, but she actually uses an AI tool called Opus Clip. And just to kind of give you an idea, so if I go give a presentation, we'll video it in an iPhone, whatever, or I might get the raw footage for somebody. We may use, let's say it's a 30-minute, even webinar. I do a ton of webinars. We can splice that 30 minutes into, let's say, conservatively 40 different clips. Well, I did one thing and now I've got 40 pieces of content because Opus Clip will take these highlights, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, whatever you put in, and you can do transcribes on that and stuff. So there are two AI tools that make it very cheap, and very easy to do that. So people think, oh, I need to get a video crew and do all this. No, no, the iPhones, all the phones are plenty. Yes, you might want to get a little bit of an external mic that gets some good audio. Where I know Golf Live, we've done some content together, and I might do a long form answer, and you guys splice it up into 3 different things, and now we're collaborating on that. So I understand the overwhelm at first, but the other part I would say with the social media is what do you feel that audience needs to hear? Okay. So I tend to say things certainly about the mental game, maybe stuff that where I'm on the PGA tour, this is what I'm learning. But again, that's part of my brand. I want it to be that. I have never done a clip on how to fix your slice. Not that I don't know how to do it, but that's not where I want my brand to be. And I want people to say, oh, that was an interesting comment Rick made, or I disagree with what Rick said. That's fine too. Okay. Because now they're interacting with the content, but I'm being very clear on what my message is and who I am. And I think I know people want to go viral and let's do these goofy things. If that's how you want to do it, fine. I want the long play of where I want to be looked upon as one of the best mental game coaches in the world. Thus, here's what the content I want out. And it'll keep taking a while. But to your point, you're giving a golf lesson and you're with that 18 handicap who's now just fixed a slice and you see how smiling they are, that better be on your next post. So you have ways to leverage it that is not just come up with a new idea, but yeah, how do you teach? People want to see how you communicate.
Correct.
One of my, I don't know, viral, if that's probably too strong of a word, but I took a influencer, a podcaster, and gave him a 9-hole playing lesson. Now I spliced that all up. That's a lot of content. And then he put it on his thing, and we got a lot of positive reviews like, oh, well, that's what a playing lesson looks like. Oh, I didn't know what mental game on that. And that helped my brand. It helped his brand. So sometimes collaborate with somebody can also be helpful.
Yeah. And one of the things that we talked about, I shared with you, like, so I'm going to go back before social media. And one of the things that I quickly became aware of was that when I did voiceover summaries, right? And I figured out how to do it in lesson, but back in the day, when I would go home and sit there and do the, 5, 6, or 7 voiceovers at the end of the day and send those to the students, those were marketing tools, right?
Hmm.
Because those people, when they played better and their buddies asked them, "Hey, what are you doing?" They pull out their mobile device, show it to their buddies, and they're like, "Oh, this is what I'm doing. Look at this video, right?" And they're like, "Well, who is that?" "Well, that's my coach," right? And so the number of lessons that I got from, because they become your best forms of advertising. But now think of it this way. So you've done that, and I always ask for permission before I go and post anything. But
Sure.
if you take if that video that is in that individual's pocket, now if you take that and you start to post that on social where 1,000, 5,000, or 50,000 people can see it, you're now developing and expanding your reach and your brand. So it's not like you have to take a lot of time. This doesn't have to be all consuming. And I do think there is a strategy around what you're doing. What is your message? What are you leaning into? What is your specialization? And there are some things that I do think, and this is one of the things that we help coaches with, is how do I create proper content? Like I saw a post on, I think it was Instagram the other day, of a coach that was doing chipping from 50 yards away from his camera with no mic. The lighting was wrong. Like it's like those are the things that we can help with that. And if you can find somebody, like, there's strategies around like what creates good content. What settings should your camera be on your phone? Spend $50 or $100 on a decent mic so that regardless of where you are in relationship to your device, they can hear you, right? And what is the hook, right? There's got to be something that gets people's attention. Because think about it, they're scrolling through hundreds, if not thousands, of things every single day. And what's on the thumbnail that's going to make them stop and click? And those are the things that that the experts can help with. So
Definitely.
um, I think I'm almost coming up here on time here at quarter. I know there's an update there. I don't think if anybody has any more questions, please pop them in. It's been a pleasure being on, but Rick, I give you an opportunity here as we take it up to quarter of, to just tell everybody a little bit about what you do with Flow Code.
Oh, sure. Yeah, make it quick. Flowcode is a platform that I've developed over the last 7 years. We do certify coaches with the mental game, and they get PDRs for that. I think we're at 16 because it's a pretty extensive certification. So you get 16 PDRs for those coaches that are interested in that part of the business. And then we offer other solutions from a software standpoint of kind of being partners for the mental game with different academies and such. So yeah, that's theflowcode.com. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, it's always a pleasure being on with you. And I will just share with everybody real quick. What we do at Golf Live is very simply we provide software solutions that save coaches time. That's my that's my first to second floor elevator speech. scheduling video software, the ability to monetize your content, as well as doing live streams. And we do help with social media as well. So there's several arms to our business. But anybody who's looking to spend less time doing administrative work and more time coaching and leveraging their coaching to make more money, that's what I do every day and helping coaches with that. So thank you, Nikki and Caitlin, for having us on. This has been great.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. We were just laughing. Me and Nikki were like, these guys could talk for another 2 hours if we let them. You guys are awesome. So much.
We could.
I know it's awesome. There's so much good information and tidbits there. So we really appreciate the time. And you guys are welcome to stay. We have another speaker, but if you have to hop, no worries. But Alan, Rick, thank you for you guys' support of our sections and all you do for the game and the industry. And really appreciate your knowledge this morning. So take care, okay?
Thank you very much.
guys.
Have a great weekend. Thanks.
Thank you. You too. And then next, we have our last speaker here this morning, Craig Kessler, our Executive Director for the California Alliance for Golf. So, Craig, I will give it to you with about 15 minutes to go.
Okay, so I think I'll open up with something that literally came across my desk while Rick was explaining his brand as specializing in young players who have some ambitions to play college golf and maybe something beyond then. And that is that, which caused me to think that there has to be someone out there whose brand might be something more like a senior who's looking to recover a semblance of the game he once had. Might be the kind of brand pro I'm looking for. But the bill that many of you are tracking, that the California Alliance for Golf is sponsoring in this session of the legislature, literally, it went through the assembly 70-0. It's landed in the Senate, as all bills land in the other house. It went through its first policy committee of reference on consent and found out while on air here that it's going through its second policy committee of reference on the business committee on Monday on consent as well. That's important because we had our tickets and we were all ready to fly up to Sacramento to testify. Now we don't. I think that bodes very well for it moving through appropriations, obviously a floor vote, and I'm starting to feel pretty good that this bill that protects the integrity of golf tee time reservations in the public sector from piracy is, we're going to turn this bill into a law. So I'm going to move on. The rest of the legislative session, if you've been listening or even reading, this has been a pretty good year for us. Not only the bill we're sponsoring, but we haven't seen the kind of, how shall I say, ugly bills that we've had to either swat down or try to get amended, some of the more odious provisions. That's been a lot of our activity in recent years. I don't know whether that's a sign that this is an election year, a sign of confusion, or just a sign of dumb luck, but we'll certainly take it. I know that some of you, particularly those of you who are in Southern California, and very specifically in the Los Angeles area, have been contacting me. I know you've contacted Nikki Gatch. You've gotten wind of something which has appeared in normative media, but also a little bit on social media about the potential of, on this November's ballot, a parcel tax on the city of Los Angeles's 7 private golf clubs, not equity for private golf clubs, of which there are 7 within the city limits. Very prominent clubs, I might add. Many of you may have heard that the proposal was to look at something at $4 a square foot. Anyone who knows how that adds up to the acreage of a golf course will recognize 2 things. First of all, most parcel taxes are more like the one on Measure W, which is a stormwater capture parcel tax that we spent a lot of time talking about, that succeeded 8 years ago and has brought a lot of benefit in terms of stormwater capture and water supply. That's 2.5 cents per square foot. Anyway, I'm happy to report that it is almost 100% certainty, given the timing, that nothing will appear on this November's ballot. That's good news. I think those of you who track these kinds of things very carefully know that I've been reporting for many years that this is an issue, the property taxes that are remitted by private golf clubs in the state of California are a sore point with some. And I want to state one thing very clearly. If you read something contrary in the media, all of the golf courses pay 100% of the taxes they owe under law, 100% of the time and on time. That's not the issue. The issue, there are those who think that is not sufficient. So they question the law rather than the adherence to the law. They're entitled to their opinion. That's an opinion. I do think that's an opinion held by enough persons that we haven't heard the last of the issue. In what form, I don't know. Whether it would be a parcel tax or something else on a ballot, that who knows? I can't predict those kinds of things, but I think it's an issue all should be aware of. Another piece of fairly good news on that particular count, as a result of some really high-level discussions and machinations late yesterday in our state capitol, it would appear that an initiative you may have heard of, sponsored by the Jarvis-Gann Taxpayer Association, that would close a certain loophole which allowed some taxes to pass on a 50% plus one threshold of the electorate, as opposed to 2/3. That would be those proposed as citizens' initiatives rather than put on a ballot by a city council or the state legislature, that in essence, a constitutional amendment will be on our ballots this November that would restore that 2/3 majority to everything moving forward. So I guess if something like that parcel tax or something else involving property taxes or golf courses were to go on anybody's ballot, should this pass in November, that would be require a 2/3 vote. And I guess that's good news. There are some other details in there in which there were a lot of high-level compromises. I'll admit I don't thoroughly understand them all, so I don't want to misinform or confuse anyone listening right now. But it would look like there was at least part of the Jarvis-Gann initiative would have been retroactive for certain kinds of initiatives, certain kinds of taxes that have been in the past, including the mansion tax in Los Angeles and some real estate transfer taxes in San Francisco, and that would appear to have been compromised away. So simply stay tuned. I'm not going to go into any more detail than that because I'll admit I haven't seen enough of them. Literally, this happened at 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon. But these are all issues for us to pay close attention to, a little bit less so than some of the very specific legislative issues we've dealt with in recent years, at least for the time being and moving forward. So let me kind of, move on to some other things. Again, because I think this legislative session is, rapidly coming to an end, there are some interesting things that we're tracking in terms of reporting water use for data centers, for other things like that. But we're certainly not taking positions. They're just simply the kinds of things that we track a lot of things because they give us indicators of where the politics are and, more importantly, where the politics may be moving. And the only comment I'll give on that is if I could draw any conclusion from the primary election, and you've seen even less so perhaps in California than in New York, for those of you who are political wonks and follow these things like I do, but a faction who calls themselves Democratic Socialists of America are on the ascendancy in major cities, in California, certainly in New York. And I think that is a trend of something we should all be aware of. We live in a very heavy populist era, populism of the right. I'm not going to go into an explanation of that. This is populism of the left. And in populist eras, you hold on to your hats because it's a reflection that the electorate is very angry. And when anger combines sometimes with the golf community or the golf industry, as you know, there are some people who don't necessarily like us. And if you recognized in this whole issue of a potential parcel tax, the same set of factors that we dealt with for a few years earlier in this decade, that we tagged public golf endangerment acts, which put into jeopardy the municipal sector in the state's largest cities. This was just the flip side of the private sector, and it all goes back to something that I always give apologies to James Carville. We have to understand in golf, it's not the economy, stupid, it's the land, stupid. And if those who are offended by that last word, stupid, I don't think we can ever forget. And even if the issues are water, and I'll close with that, there is golf's Achilles heel in terms of how it deals with public policy at all levels, has to do with the fact that golf courses encumber a lot of acreage. And as time moves on, and as cities grow, and suburbs grow, and exurbs grow, and population fills in, and land becomes scarce and more expensive, and as particularly in this state, no matter what demographic you poll, cities, country, farms, it doesn't live Democratic precincts, Republican precincts, and you ask, what's the number one problem in California? The problem is housing, particularly the affordability of it. And so keep in mind, whether it's YIMBY on one side or developers or those who simply have some issue with the way property taxes are remitted on properties whose use does not generate any income. In fact, the owners have the privilege of paying a lot of money for the privilege of keeping space open. There's a lot of everyone's eyes are upon these properties for other uses, and that we have to remain vigilant at all times, that those are sort of the intersections of our trouble. So let me just close in the last couple of minutes with a bit of an update on the Colorado Basin. There's been a lot of good reporting on that. The New York Times this last weekend put out something nationally that I thought that I've shared with a lot of people, that was a great explanation of the absolute confusion that is going on among the 7 states who the federal government would like to come to some consensus or agreement before they step in later this year, and we're not coming to agreement. Excellent reporting in the far west, including some that appeared in the LA Times and in some Colorado papers, that literally things, if we expect in the lower basin states of Arizona, Nevada, and California, that the water that we keep giving back to the Colorado Basin so that Lakes Mead and Powell don't fall below critical mass necessary to produce electricity. The Colorado Rockies are they're in a crisis stage. So I don't think we can expect that they're going to come to the table to concede much of anything, which means that we were probably headed later this year to a federally mandated solution that will make everyone unhappy. I'll share with this group what I shared in Washington, D.C. At the beginning of May in a meeting with the Department of Interior, something they did not take kindly to, I might add, that the worst case scenario is that the state we live in, which has all the rights under the water law to that water, in essence becomes fed up with the whole process and invokes those rights in federal court. Federal courts uphold them, and upholding of those rights literally puts one of our states out of business, Arizona. That is not going to be allowed to stand, the law notwithstanding, and the federal government will have to call some crisis and then come in. It'd be nice if we could avoid that moment, but I hope that the 7 states and the water districts that are involved can come to those compromises and sort of come to a sense that everyone's going to have to give something in order for all to come out of this thing whole. The reality is that the Colorado Basin produces just a lot less water than it did 100 years or a little over 100 years ago when we allocated the river. And it would appear that as we move towards mid-century, that number is going to go down, that amount's going to go down and down. And so to the degree to which so many in Southern California anyway, and particularly the state of Arizona, are dependent on these things, just keep yourself strapped in. So with that, I see I've got about a minute and a half before we hit the hour of 11. And wanting to demonstrate to Nikki and Caitlin that it is possible for me to actually sign off with 30, 40, 50 seconds left so they can say goodbye to everybody. Let me say thank you for having me on. Despite the fact that I talked about a lot of dire things, maybe next month I'll talk about something I intend to write about here very soon on behalf of the California Alliance for Golf. All in all, things are looking really good, not so much with the problems we face, but we are in better position to handle those problems we face than at any time in my recollection of advocacy in golf. So that's the good news. Is it good enough? No, but it's a lot better than it used to be, and that bodes well moving forward. And it's not 11 o'clock, and I'm signing off. Thank you.
Love that. Thank you, Craig. I really appreciate you always being here and giving everyone updates. So thanks for all you do. Yeah, we're closing out the hour here. It was a great session today. We do have a great session next month for you. So just a reminder for that, save the date, July 17th. We're going to have our Chief Operating Officer with the PGA of America, the new Chief Operating Officer, Phil Anderson, will be on. So he'll be able to give us some PGA updates and just get to know him a little bit since he's pretty new in the role. So look forward to that. If you did call in, make sure you let your section office know. Otherwise, we'll get their PDRs reported here. And Nikki, any other final words from you?
We're all good. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your Friday and weekend. We'll see you next month.
All right. Take care, everyone.